This is number one bullshit.
This is bullshit.
It was all bullshit.
Hi, welcome back to another edition of BS Opinions.
I'm Brody.
I'm Shane. And we got quite a lot of stuff to cover today. We were off last week. I was under the weather. Brody had Thanksgiving stuff he was doing. So we're back. We got quite a bit to cover, so we're going to kind of dive right in here. Of course, probably the biggest thing that's going around right now, both physically and through conversation, is Omicron. Mm-hmm. So the Omicron variant of COVID didn't, as they say, originate in South Africa. They believe it may have originated in Botswana, which is where they think the first case was, or it might have originated anywhere. They're not quite sure, but it was discovered, shall you say, like the process, the scientific process of actually mapping the variant came through in South Africa, which there's being a lot of reports that they're being treated unfairly now by doing the right thing by reporting the variant with the travel bans to them and all that. But
it's the opposite of what China did.
Yeah.
At the beginning of the pandemic when it broke out, and they were like, oh no, it didn't start here. It's
definitely more honest than what China did. Surprise, surprise. So
it's interesting with Omicron. People are talking about it like, oh no, this is going to be the new variant. It's going to be the most deadly. We need to do all these lockdowns again. But the basic germ theory behind disease and viruses is that over the lifespan of a virus, it becomes more transmissible, which means it's easier to spread, but it becomes less deadly because you don't, as a virus, you don't want to kill your host. You want to be in your host long enough for that host to be able to spread your whatever you are to another person. So that's why germ theory suggests that viruses become less deadly over time.
Yeah, some people were on the fence about that when it came to the Delta variant, because it seemed like the Delta variant was more deadly, but I'm not sure if that's true. I don't have the statistics in front of me.
It'd be a rule of thumb.
Yeah.
It'd be a rule of thumb, not certainties.
Yeah, but from the reports coming out right now is that this variant doesn't seem to be any more deadly than Delta. It also seems that there's some reports coming out that it's less deadly, that it's more like a cold. I mean, you have Dr. Angelique Coetzee, is her name, who is the doctor that discovered the variant, basically coming out in reports and saying, what are you guys doing? You're all overreacting. The symptoms are extremely mild. It's basically kind of like a bad cold.
It seems to me that if you overemphasize the repercussions or the ramifications of the illness, you can then magnify your reaction to it. So if you say, oh, all you need is a Band-Aid, put it on there, you'll be good to go. Well, the government's not going to be able to expand their grasp on the situation. But when you compare that to, this is super deadly, we gotta lock everything down, it allows them to react in ways that they get to expand the things that they have control of.
Yeah, of course, the government's nature is kind to either ignore or overreact. That's kind of how they quarterback everything. Of course, what a surprise. Fauci is out here saying, prepare for the worst, expect the worst. Get vaccinated, his whole mantra. Honestly, guys, if anybody's going to be swayed by what Dr. Fauci says at this point, I don't know who those people are. I literally don't know who those people are that would be swayed by Fauci. Everybody's pretty affirmed on their opinions on that guy, devil or angel,
Yeah, so I agree that he's probably not swaying anybody's opinion really anymore. Maybe a very, very small amount of people. But overall, he is the face of the movement of medical COVID solutions in a sense.
Yeah, they've committed to him as sort of the spokesman, right? I mean, they wouldn't get rid of him during Trump, and they definitely not going to get rid of him under Biden. And I think he, the way, just watching him, the way he laughs about about calling himself the science, and how he mockingly laughs about how he should be. Some people think he should be prosecuted over
what he said to the Senate.
Yeah, it's the guy is completely a political actor at this point. He's more political than anything. He cares about in anybody who in their own documentary about them is in a room with a portrait of themselves in the room. Definitely has some ego issues. Definitely is not lacking for confidence. But not to go off on a Fauci rant. You know how we feel about Fauci at this point. But
might loop back in another relevant way here in the future.
Yeah. So like Omicron, it's the very end of the month club. I do think it might be used for nefarious purposes. So
to me, it kind of loops back to the idea of the Catholic Church back when they had all the power in Europe. They had control over the interpretation of, then it was scripture, but now it's of the scientific nature of illness. And so there's a ton of people that don't have access to all this information, or maybe they can't understand the information that they have access to, and so that they look to these leaders of either the church or the government or whatever, and these people have a certain amount of authority that they've accumulated that they would lose if people understood everything.
Yeah, and there's a door there to is science the new predominant religion in the world? And I'm scared to open it because it leads quite down the rabbit hole of discussion. Because I guess I'll open it a little bit. So it used to be that people had a deity that they worship, and there were rules and regulations around that. Yeah, I mean, it's still prevalent. It's not as prevalent, but because and the reason for that is because science is kind of taking over as the new, more predominant religion. We worship at the altar. So many people worship at the altar of science. But here's the thing: there's a difference, and people seem to not be, as woke to this idea as others. Is that there's always been a difference to me between science, what is science, and what is state-sponsored science. Science is the earth. Science in
scientific method.
Yeah, in the 1492 or whatever. State-sponsored science for a long time said the Earth was flat, when real science said the Earth is round, and and that wasn't accepted for a long while. And if you thought the Earth was round, you were kooky,
killed.
Yeah, science said that the sun, state-sponsored science said that the sun goes around the Earth because the Earth is the center of everything, obviously. But, real science says, no, the Earth goes around the sun because that's how gravity works, larger objects, etc., etc.
It's weird, though, because science naturally explained the world to us, and it explains things that we're yet to understand, but we're on the cusp of understanding. So it's like when you move a light across a room, it kind of expands out, and you can see more. And that's what science does. Science is like the edge of a light expanding out, and so the light would represent the knowledge. But the state-sponsored would be using whatever you've found out to be true in nefarious ways, not necessarily the universe and the sun. That was more of coming from biblical scripture, but there's ways you can interpret scientific data that isn't represented by the data itself. And like you learn this when you go through like research classes, that people interpret things in different ways, even if they're from the same scientific source, the same experiment.
Oh yeah, it's studying history. You get that all the time. You get people that read little bits of, when I was a history major, you get people who read little bits of, documented evidence, and they make whole cases out of things. But yeah, trying to stay back on the Omicron variant. I don't think that it's incredibly dangerous, but I think it will be used and shown as dangerous, and I think it will be used to justify. It might be used to justify new things like new lockdowns and things like that. There's a bunch of people trying to say that new lockdowns are coming too, and I think, like I just said, that's a possibility, but I also don't think that the Democrats want that smoke.
We gotta ask where. So I think you're meaning in the United States.
Yeah.
I could see lockdowns happening in places like California already has a vaccine mandate where you can't go to grocery stores, you can't go to the movies. I don't even know if you might get checked if you're in the park.
I mean, California.
But that's
California at this point is like, if you go to France, if you go to anywhere in France that's not Paris, they tell you they hate the Parisians. They don't consider the Parisians French. They consider them Parisian. In Paris, they speak a different dialect of French. The Parisians consider themselves Parisian, not French.
Like a city-state.
Yeah, but they're part of France. California is essentially that for me at this point. California is a different nation at this point, but
New York will go the same way. There's a lot of it, and the other blue states. There'll be a decision that has to be made, and I guess it'll come down to like the cinema types that might push back against the lockdowns. But we can also look to other countries like Australia's lockdowns and see how poorly things are going there.
Oh man, Australia is something else, man. Australia is off the deep end. Yeah. I don't know what is going through those guys' mind. Brody, have you seen the video of the Northwest Territories, like governor or magistrate or something? Have you seen that about his rail against the anti-vax or something?
I've seen some things from him, but I don't know if I've seen this exact speech.
This guy, he goes, I think he's the governor of the Northwest Territories, and there's a video of him giving this speech. This guy, he's making this vehement speech that essentially, where he says, if you're anti-mandate, you're anti-vax, and I don't care what you say, I don't care about your vaccination status. And this guy is speaking with the fervor of like a Pentecostal preacher. This guy has absolute hate and disdain for anti-vaxxers. There's no way you watch this video of this guy and be like, oh yeah, this guy just, he cares about public health and he wants to help people, okay? No, this guy has hate in his heart. I don't really know where it stems from. But, that and the overall, happenings in Australia, there were protests by the construction workers there in Melbourne that turned violent.
They had the indigenous people break out of the voluntary COVID camp to get rounded back up and brought back.
They had people who were tested, came out negative, that were brought to these camps, and they were essentially probably like, why am I here then if I'm negative? And they wouldn't be let go, and so they left, and
they escaped at the dawn of morning at the precise opportune moment.
The precise term the Australian government is using for this is absconded, which absconded means to basically illegally run away, escape. The camps, which they called camps, and now they're not calling camps anymore because that drums up bad imagery. they're supposed to be, they're being called voluntary, even though Brody, you know a little bit more about this. They're being picked up essentially.
Yeah, so if you come into contact with somebody that has tested positive for COVID-19, that's what happened to the 3 gentlemen that got rounded up and brought to the camp. They were being held there against their will. They felt fine. They tested negative, but they were still a potential COVID risk because they'd been in contact with somebody that had tested positive. It's wild to think that the government of Australia has prioritized the limiting the spread of a virus over the will of the people. So you have like 2 paths, and they're making you go down one path, kicking and screaming, instead of saying, we disagree, do what you think is best.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at Australia's track record, you're going to see, they essentially got rid of private, ownership of arms there. They, it's more and more of a, not just a welfare state or, a responsible government model, but more of a we control everything model through the guise of a democratic republic. It would not be a shock to me that Australia, if they haven't already, they will suspend their elections. They won't have.
That'd be something.
Yeah, I would not be surprised if Australia goes full totalitarian and tells you, no, we tell you what you're going to do for the perceivable future. And that place essentially becomes a...
prison camp again.
Yeah, it reverts back to the prison colony roots. I don't, and I think you will get, you might get more violence, more unrest there.
That's a thing that we're just not being shown, and it's not just in Austria. It's in France. It's in Austria. It's in a ton of European countries right now because they're shoving these mandates before the U.S.
And in Austria and Germany and all that, Germany planning their, forced mandate and all that already, but they're going back to lockdown. They originally said, we have to lock down the unvaccinated. This was in Austria, and now they changed that to we're locking down everybody. It's one of those situations where you realize, and especially me, like I didn't really realize this until, these past few years, just how much liberty we have in the United States, how much we're guaranteed, which makes me feel real hopeful for our nation, not as much the European nations or Australia. I just kind of feel bad for them.
The decentralized, and this could be a nice transition into the Supreme Court topic, but the decentralization of the United States, where the state governments are supposed to, and to some extent, have the majority of control of legislation, that secures independence for individuals to some extent, added with the Constitution and those things.
Yeah, I mean, you don't think about, our Bill of Rights and like how that affects us on a day-to-day basis as opposed to other nations. They don't have that Bill of Rights. They have essentially the same kind of rights, but they're seen more as privileges,
Revocable.
And those privileges are being taken away right now, and it's been so long since that's been perceivable that these people are just in this nation and in these nations like Australia, Austria, whatever, they're angry and shocked, and as they should be, but also those are seen as privileges under the legal guise of their governments, not rights. But moving over into rights and rights within this nation, the United States, there's the extended right, the right to privacy that's been extended through several court cases. And the implied right to privacy was extended, primarily, in one of the big veins to Roe v. Wade, and that is kind of a hot Supreme Court case that's in right now. So if you don't know, the Supreme Court is looking at a case right now called I think it's Mississippi versus the Jackson Women's Health Organization. So essentially, they want to, if they ruled in the favor of, I believe,
the state.
Yeah, the state. It would push essentially abortion rights back to 15 weeks being the cutoff point to where you could get an abortion. You can go ahead, Brody, if you have more.
It seems like this case has it's a dragon with three heads, because you have the Supreme Court ruling in Roe v. Wade, essentially making abortions legal in all 50 states. You have the privacy factor, which is detached from abortion specifically, but applies to it more generally, where the government does not have the right or ability to interfere with individuals' medical decisions. And then you have this third loop that's coming from Mississippi, saying that we are going to... The Supreme Court never should have made a ruling that applied to all 50 states in the manner that they did in Roe v. Wade, and that might get reversed. So those are kind of the three topics I see that are at stake or being changed through the court proceedings.
Yeah, so essentially you had Roe v. Wade being the landmark case that essentially said that the right to privacy extends to women's rights to have an abortion, et cetera, et cetera. Then you had, Casey versus Planned Parenthood, which established the viability law, or viability standard, which essentially says that. So I've heard different things, but essentially, according to my wife, who's a nurse in mother-baby health, this is what she does. Viability is essentially 22 weeks with assistance, and 24 weeks without assistance. So the standard is kind of 24 weeks is considered viability. So if you're allowed to get an abortion up to then.
And that's 6 months. I mean,
yeah,
that's far into a pregnancy. Like you'd see it in the woman at that point. She's having a lot of biological changes.
If we compare it to laws in other countries, such as even France, like our abortion laws are actually very progressive.
Progressive in the fact that they allow for things here that they wouldn't allow other places.
Yeah, progressive in this term meaning they have, more liberty standards attached to them. That you have the liberty and the freedom to get an abortion in a safe, regulated clinic, that as opposed to a lot of places where you have to do that kind of stuff back alley, and was the case before Roe v. Wade and things like that. But this new case takes it back to the court is kind of considering the three-pronged solution, which is either basically overturning Roe, which would be the bombshell, which would go back to essentially states' control of
abortion law.
Yeah, abortion law, where you have the overturning of Casey, basically, which basically means that we're going to go back to the 15 or allow Mississippi to have the 15 weeks. We're going to get rid of the viability standard. Or
change it.
Yeah, or change the viability standard.
Allow the states to set the viability standard.
Yeah, because the healthcare is improving. Viability, increasing in terms of time when this can when this can be changed. It's already been changed once. I think Brody, you said 1992.
73 and 92. So 73 was the precedent, and 92 was when it was first changed. And I think they just shaved a few weeks off of it. But
yeah. So but in terms of in vitro, those few weeks make a whole lot of difference. These rights, they go back to, they also can be extended to, the idea of COVID and COVID mandates and all that. The idea of a woman being able to do what she wants with her body, and
So correct me if I'm wrong, but Roe v. Wade didn't set the standard that abortions were legal. It set the standard that states didn't have the right to intrude on the privacy of individuals in the states' medical decisions, and then abortion got categorized in that.
Yeah, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
It's basically, like I said, an extension of the privacy right, I believe, under the Fourth Amendment.
Search and seizure.
Yeah. So the Fourth Amendment has the implied right to, the legal scholars have said that it has the implied right to privacy, which is, was also a legal argument in the FISA Act and the portions of the Patriot Act, essentially.
So relating that back to the mandates, I wonder if there would be a precedent for being able to fight a vaccine mandate under the same guise.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was leading to, which is that you have the common phrase "my body, my choice," right? That's always been extended to abortion, but now you see that more also with vaccine mandates. It's my body, it's my choice to be vaccinated or not. But if they overturn the precedent of Roe, that could lead in for more legal ground, I think, for them to push a vax mandate,
Mm-hmm.
which is
Scary.
which is dangerous in many ways.
That's why so I guess if they ruled on Casey rather than Roe, and Roe stood, it would be a middle ground, so the states would still get some more power to regulate abortions while still securing the privacy established by Roe v. Wade.
Yeah. So I personally think that they'll split the difference here. I think that they will get rid of the viability standard, but I think they'll keep Roe. I think also it's partially because they don't want that smoke again.
So when you say get rid of the viability standard, would that just be on the federal level?
On the federal level, I think they would go back basically to states.
Uh-huh. So there would still be a viability law. It would just vary. So Mississippi, it might be 15. California, it might be the day before he falls out. So
yeah, if you get rid of Roe, you essentially go back to states being able to say whether or not you can have an abortion.
Mm-hmm.
So you're gonna have some states that say no, some states that say yes, that's gonna happen. But
you would have that.
yeah, I mean, like here in Missouri, we are the
Sorry for the technical difficulties. We are back.
yeah. So as I was saying, here in Missouri, we only have two places really where you can get an abortion. There's a place in Columbia, and there's a place in I believe Kansas City. But those are the two only viable clinics where that kind of service can be provided. Now, there's a lot of debate that's going on there. I believe they're still in the debate portion of this case. You have Justice Amy Coney Barrett basically saying she continues to keep pressing this question of like, well, if adoption is a viable option, why does abortion even exist at all? And it's also important to note that Justice Barrett has to adopted children. So, but I think there's articles also being released that say like the horrors of adoption, and that adoption is a bad practice or whatever, and
it ends poorly for some kids, but it's overall good.
Yeah, I mean, like my wife was almost had to be adopted because my mother-in-law was a young mother who couldn't take care of her kid because her husband died, and they're going through kind of an adoption process right now. Legally I can't speak really about it, but these kinds of things, they're going to be very highly debated on, and they do set precedents for other matters such as like COVID mandate rights and things like that. And I'd be very, very, very careful whether you're on a conservative view set that not to basically shoot yourself in the foot here based upon rights to choices with your body and those beliefs.
Yeah, it's interesting how it all kind of comes together there, how conservatives can win one battle but actually lose another even though it's the same court case.
Yeah, and
I would like to ask you, what do you think the role of government should be in a pandemic? Because it kind of appears to me that the libertarian approach to the situation would be that people solve problems, but then the more liberal side, the more left side of the argument would say that government solves problems. So I struggle sometimes to think about what the proper reaction to the pandemic would have been, because clearly I think the ship was steered too much, but it doesn't mean they shouldn't have done nothing, and I struggle sometimes to map out that line.
Yeah, so you can go even further than that. Libertarian, conservative, a lot of
they're different.
They're different, but they're kind of on the same strain of that, that the government actually didn't do much to actually help. It was actually private businesses that did this. It was private businesses that, if you do believe in vaccines, like they developed the vaccines, they created them, they helped mass produce them. The government, what did the Trump administration do? He ordered that Ford start making ventilators that ended up not actually being helpful,
being used,
I'm not even sure that compulsory act actually went into effect. I think he just threatened it, but
the same vein, Pfizer was heavily funded, Moderna, tons of these medical companies, big pharma were giving tons and tons of money to make these vaccines. And now those vaccines are being forced upon people, or at least distributed and then forced onto some.
Yeah, I don't agree that, I'm obviously in the vein that I think government is doing too much, especially in this circumstance. Yeah, I don't think that it is the role of government to, basically, I don't believe in responsible government model, which is, that it's the job of the government to caretake for its society and for its people. I think in terms of public health, it should be the right of the citizen. Here's the thing: a lot of people, they don't. I'm going to be hyperbolic here a little bit, but I'm going to say they don't get the United States.
The founding idea.
The idea of the United States is that in the United States, it is a high risk, high reward country, and in the way that anybody has the potential to become a millionaire, to
fulfill their dream.
Yeah, to fulfill their dream, to pursuit of happiness and all that. The trade-off is that it's a lot more risky. You could fail really hard. You could ruin your life. You can also, you go back to the old West and westward expansion and all that. You could die, and you could die pretty easily. back then at least, and now we're facing that again, where the whole premise of the United States is that you have more choice, but the trade-off is you also have more danger.
We let you steer your own ship, but we won't stop you from crashing it.
Yeah, and there's a lot of it's funny because in some ways other countries get this, and they get it even more than in the United States. I mean, you look at Germany and the Autobahn. You have a huge highway system that has no speed limit, and they give people the autonomy there, and it works really well, and they don't get how the United States can function as a society, as a country, with just that philosophy. But we do, and we have for a long time, and now and now that's kind of being challenged, and there's this war going on. I think Brody,
it's not even challenged; it's decaying. There's constantly chipping away at it for however you want to say it, my entire lifetime, probably longer.
It's the cancer of the responsible party model or responsible government model, growing and metastasizing within the nation, and radical leftism is helping spread that. There's no more.
I mean, identity politics is essentially labeling one class as less than another, so the government needs to support them.
Yeah, I mean, it's full of contradictions. This whole philosophy, the idea. We look at modern society. We're supposed to be the generation. You and I, generation. We're supposed to be the generation that gets rid of labels. And how do we get rid of labels? Well, we've created about a bunch, millions more labels. So,
we didn't reduce the amount of labels. We increased the amount of acceptable labels, hypothetically speaking.
Yeah, so it's not actually, helping anyone there. I mean, you have, it's interesting because, though, I think what gives me hope, Brody, is that you're starting to see some actors, even on the left, basically be like, this doesn't seem like it jives. This seems weird. I mean, the latest is like Trevor Noah. I don't know if you followed what happened to him in the press recently. So essentially, Trevor Noah, the Omicron variant came out, and he's, Pfizer essentially said, we're gonna need a new wave of vaccines for this variant, and we're gonna need more vaccines that you're gonna have to get, and they basically Trevor Noah essentially put out a tweet that was like, a new variant comes out, and Moderna and Pfizer say that you need new vaccines to fight it, and it had a picture of him being like, and essentially, showing his distrust that his distrust of it, and essentially, I think actors on the left are starting to be like, okay, well, is this about safety anymore, or is this about your profits? And there's nothing people on the left hate more than corporations making vast, ugly amounts of money.
Yeah.
So
when it comes to COVID vaccines, it is essentially like Pokemon badges. So they're going to open it up and be like, oh my God, you got all 8 badges? You're so cool. I've only got 5 badges. I'm still working on them. And to be fully vaccinated, your status is going to be more and more and more, because these things aren't going to stop.
Yeah, the Seinfeld meme where Costanza is going through his wallet and it says, me looking for my proof of my 30th booster to buy a $55 hot and ready from Little Caesars. And I think vaccines, they're going to keep continuing to push this because it's how they make money. Like, it's their bet. I mean, you have the CEO or CFO or somebody important from Pfizer being interviewed at, I believe, CNBC, basically saying, hey, the interviewer saying, yeah, you guys are, the Omicron variant coming out. You guys are saying we're going to need new vaccines or need boosters, and like your stock is, really jumping up. It's almost like it's an annual windfall for you guys. And they're like, yeah. And meanwhile, they have the ticker like right next to them with the stock going up. So it's. Of course, Moderna actually they kind of lost right now on the stock market. They needed new vaccines just to counterbalance because they don't have patents on this one that they made because they lost that court battle, and then maybe that plays into it a little bit.
I mean, the best case or the minimal improvement that it would make is that we will have testing of these things outside of government and corporate. The corporation that made it won't be the only person that gets to do tests on it.
Yeah, so when it's also when it's more decentralized, more spread out, and more people. Yeah,
I love decentralized.
Yeah, Brody's a big fan of decentralization, but when it's more distributed throughout the world, there's also going to be more people looking into it, and when more eyes get on it, I think there's more potential. They see flaws in it, see bad things, and I wouldn't be surprised if you see a few articles come out that say, hey, what's this in the Moderna vaccine that doesn't make any sense? But yeah, rights are really coming under fire here, and is it in the name of increased profits or in the name of increased power? Maybe both.
It's weird though to use the word rights here because you talked about kind of the ethos of America, or like what it was set out to be: high risk, high reward. But the rights given to people in the Constitution didn't come from the government. That's not what the founders believed when they wrote it. And so it's people today act as if the government has that privilege that they can take a right. But in America, that privilege doesn't come from the government. And that's one of the disconnects, because a true American will get told something by their government that infringes on their rights, and they'll flip off the government and say no. And that's the true American way.
Yeah, I mean, they literally call the rights, unalienable, which, it means essentially, intrinsic, or given to you, by a higher power,
given to you by the gift of life.
Yeah,
is a non-religious way to view it. Like if you and me were in a forest and you attacked me, there is nothing that would prevent me from reacting to that. And so the right to self-defense is an inalienable right.
Yeah.
And since that breaks down further, we get the Second Amendment out of it.
Yeah, so, rights, the whole idea of the United States government is that you had certain unalienable rights, which are rights that were intrinsic, that could not be taken away from you and under any other circumstances. Now, whether that can be, now whether you can argue government can regulate those rights is a different story. But how far the regulations go before they then become preventions is an argument that can be made. But I don't think again that our rights will really be continuously under siege. I mean, the midterms are coming up. I don't expect Republicans, once they get in power, because they're definitely going to do a huge lot to help the situation. But I do believe that it will be some easing. I think people should definitely pay attention to their primaries. People should definitely pay attention to their local elections, because if anything about this pandemic, which is now endemic, has proven local elections matter. Know your mayor.
Very much.
Yeah, know your mayor, know your sheriff. But it's something we said before, and we've gone over so many times, and that's do you really have anything to add on those on this intrinsic rights kind of idea, Brody?
I can transition it to, if it's where you want to go, to the RV incident or the SUV incident at the Christmas parade.
Ah, yes, the Waukesha. I keep forgetting we've been off and we haven't covered that subject.
Yeah.
Because
So to make the transition, I was talking about the Second Amendment and how you have the right to self-defense, and that extended to the Rittenhouse trial. And it wasn't covered from that perspective by any media source, really. It was all defending Kyle's actions in a way of self-defense, or saying that he was out there for nefarious means. And so to transition that, the media has no interest in protecting your rights or the narrative that would lead people to find their rights of high importance. And it's more sinister than that, though, because they're also not reporting accurately. I don't know how you want to... A terrorist attack might not be the best description, because I don't know the aims of the man who did it. It was certainly an attack on the American people.
I mean, for all and extensive purposes, I've looked into this guy from Waukesha. First of all, he's mentally ill. That's apparent. They say he suffered, from his childhood, he's suffered bipolar disorder, and probably from what he's done, pretty bad. He's from reports that I've read, he's radicalized leftist, he's made posts and
a black identitarian.
Yeah, made posts, things like that, anti-white sentiments,
talking about hurting people based on their skin color.
Yeah, but you are right in that this guy has a track record of being racist, anti-white, committing crimes, committing violence, huge criminal history, and committed. I guess you could say it's an act of terrorism. It's definitely a heinous act of murder. Or a heinous act of homicide. He's still
it's
not
like on
guilty, but
it's on par with like the shooting that happened from the hotel, where the guy just unloaded on the concert.
Yeah,
it's similar in that regard. So however you want to classify it, it's an act of evil.
Yeah, that one in Las Vegas was weird, because that whole story was huge and then just disappeared, and that's a whole other can of worms. But
it's weird how one was so heavily reported, one was on front news every day, and then the other one was shoved under the rug because the person who committed the crime didn't fit the profile of the person that the media wanted to tear down.
Yeah, the narrative is extremely important to the legacy media, and it's really interesting, because you have this guy where, as I was talking about, who has this track record of racism and violence, and being pro-violence for race, or on the basis of race, and then commits a heinous act of violence, and nobody, allegedly, and then nobody, they're not covering it at all. And then, Kyle Rittenhouse, he kills people in self-defense. He has no track record. He is there, in video, stating that he's there to help with medical aid and relief, and essentially, but he has the means to defend himself, and he's reported as a horrible racist killer. So it's a real strong juxtaposition, and I see what your point is there.
It's like, it's almost as if people think hate crimes, or not even people. It's that the media portrays a hate crime as only being proposed from a white majority onto a usually black, but any minority group minority. and that's just not the case.
Yeah, you look at so there's so many different kinds of hate crimes that go unreported, and the violence against white people too that gets underreported. And this guy, like I said before, he has a track record of all these different statements, and it's just really crazy that it's not reported more. But it also doesn't fit their narrative. And we have other there's other ways racial violence. It doesn't just extend from white people to black people, or there was that period of time where people were walking up punching Asian people in like New York City and things like that, and apparently over COVID or something, and or just because they wanted to. I don't know why.
Two stories. There was the knockout game where people would try to knock out people in one punch, and then that also mixed with the COVID fears because it originated in China. So
yeah,
those kind of mixed at that time to make that news story, I think.
Yeah, but hopefully we'll get more reporting out of that. Hopefully we'll get to learn more details of the case.
We won't tell the court case. And it won't be like Rittenhouse where we get to watch every single minute of it. It'll be these crappy paintings. How does that get determined? I don't even know.
I have no idea.
They show you what they want to show.
Yeah, there's some kind of process that the media probably has to go through legally to put in requests, et cetera, et cetera. It probably costs them money, and they don't want to do it. And I'm a big believer in follow the money, but also, that kind of racial violence, leads me into, let's not take it there. Let's take it to, you were talking briefly about the paintings, and speaking of those paintings, another court case that has crappy paintings coming out of it is the Ghislaine Maxwell case. That one almost completely slipped my mind when Brody and I were going over our topics this morning before the show. Ghislaine Maxwell is on trial. And I wish I had video too. I get why they said they didn't want to have video for it. Is the reason why the judge ruled is because the acts that were going to report on there were incredibly heinous and ugly or whatever, and they wanted to protect the identities of the women testifying. And
that makes sense.
Yeah, so which is why when you see all the paintings of the witnesses testifying, the girls, their faces are blotched out, but some of the things that are testified in that hearing are interesting. Now, Ghislaine's defense is what particularly is interesting. Do you know what her defense is?
Can you lay it out for me?
So her defense is cruxed upon essentially that she is being tried for the crimes of Epstein, that she did not do anything wrong or illegal. It is Epstein that did
the dead man.
Yeah, Epstein that did all the bad stuff, and because she was friends with Epstein and around him, that she's being blamed for Epstein's crimes. But if you look at the crimes she's being accused of, they don't really have they're very specific to her, procuring young girls for him, engaging in sex acts with him and the girls. And they're some of these girls, their testimony, I mean, one testified that Prince Andrew was there. But the biggest thing which it's wild, by the way, that the London Metropolitan Police are camped out in front of Prince Andrew's house and literally turning away all the civil subpoenas that are coming to him. That's so crazy that
I didn't know that.
Yeah,
I didn't know that at all.
The London Metropolitan Police are camped out. They're stationed outside of Prince Andrew's house, and anytime any kind of civil suit person comes up to subpoena him, they turn them away. And like that is wild that the government is willing to protect their nobility that way, and it's another way that is grossly different than the United States. But this the potential for this case, and what's the really juicy bit of the case, is that Ghislaine might get on the stand, and if she feels like her she's back against the wall,
it ain't going great.
Yeah, and she looks like she's gonna be guilty, which I feel like is a pretty good chance. She will start to name names and testify on her behalf. Yeah, and she'll testify on her behalf, and she might name names, and then that will not be good for a whole lot of people.
Yeah, maybe we can get the Gates into court.
Oh God, Bill Gates is that guy is he.
Not to branch off in an unnecessary direction, but
yeah, it's very suspicious. It's very, very suspicious when
Clinton.
your wife files for divorce. It comes out that your wife has filed for divorce right after it turns out your name is on the flight logs of a known pedophile and young girl procurer, and that you hung out on his island. Like it's very suspicious. Now to be fair, people say that that the divorce papers by her were actually filed before all that came out, but they probably had. There's strong opinions that they probably could have had access to that information before.
Well, it's like if your husband leaves, and given he's a man that travels a lot, but you're gonna have a general idea of what he's doing when he's not with you.
Yeah.
And as soon as that doesn't start adding up, you get that feeling. And like, who cares if they're sitting on the most money of any people in the world? You still can trust your gut that says something's wrong.
And there's also that really suspicious interview that he gave with I can't remember where it was, but
I've only seen splices of that, but
he's essentially asked, if you haven't seen it, just search Bill Gates Epstein interview. It should come up. But he essentially is asked about Epstein, and he said, I met with Epstein a few times. We had dinners, and I regret that. Yada yada yada. He knew people that were interested in helping me with my health foundation, and we were talking about that. Is like, the first question is, who does Epstein know that Bill Gates can't call himself? Like, who does Epstein know that Bill Gates, one of the richest men in the world, doesn't have access to? Like,
young women willing to perform sexual acts.
I mean, there's that. I was talking about potential donors, but
It's Bill Gates.
Yeah,
doesn't have a way with women.
Yeah, I mean, he is.
Sorry, I got to reel back in here.
Yeah, he is the quintessential star nerd, right? I mean, but there's also.
But going back to Ghislaine,
yeah,
that court case, the information that's going to come out could indict or incriminate so many people that have high status in whatever country, just in the world more generally. And if that information comes out and it is damning, that'll be fun.
Yeah, it's gonna shake up a whole lot of the power structure, and I mean, who was it? It was Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton flew with that guy 27 times. 27 times.
I did not have sexual relations with that woman.
He's a known like he got in trouble in office for sex acts with a young intern. Like it. The comedian Cat Williams had a joke about Michael Jackson, and the crux of the joke at the end, he says essentially, ain't nobody said the same thing about you for 20 years and none of it be true. Like there's no way that all these stories can come out about Bill Clinton and the nefarious sexual things that he's done with women, and none of it be true. Like it's
It'd
just
be like saying Cosby didn't do anything.
Yeah, everybody. It's one of those things that like everybody knows, but nobody acknowledges, and you know, it's just really crazy. But also kind of in the news and talking about, you know, this is a rough transition, but young women and they're being taken advantage of. Where there's a Peng Shui, I think is how you pronounce her name, and
the tennis player.
Yeah, the tennis player.
I just heard about this on my way over here.
Yeah, I don't. I know every investigator scourging through YouTube that's in China. Their ears just perked up. Yeah, Peng Shui, she was a Chinese tennis player. Is still.
Hopefully.
Yeah, Chinese tennis player, and she was, she was very, 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 very good. I think
top 1% of tennis players.
Top 5 in the world. And she basically came out, made a statement, said that she was basically abused and had a Chinese government official, top-ranking official, force himself on her. And the guy she names it's not just any top official. It's the former vice premier of China. It's the former number 2.
Be like Pence or, well, not Kamala, but somebody really high up.
Yeah, it's a big name guy, and he's also a Chinese billionaire, whatever that means, because it's not actually
fiat money.
Yeah, it's your wealth. You mean our wealth? Yeah, she basically essentially says that he forced himself on her, he took advantage of her, and et cetera, did horrible things, abused
Terrible.
her. Yeah, and
But the story's actually what happened after she said that.
Yeah, so essentially, after she said that, it was she was locked out of the account. You couldn't comment or reach her.
And it's not Twitter, but it's the Chinese equivalent, if I understand.
Yeah, and you could not reach her, you could not talk to her. She was, it was radio silence, and she was just gone for a few days. And then came the very hostagey statement.
I'm okay, guys. Don't worry about me. Nothing bad's going on.
Yeah, she basically released a statement, in basically saying that, hey guys, I'm fine. I'm not missing or anything. Everything's going well. I'm just chilling at the house, and
chilling at the Ministry of Truth.
Yeah, it had for some reason it had very Zuckerberg just smoking some meats, guys, feel to it, like very forced. And she was saying, it's a very dark subject to laugh at. I'm sorry, but she was essentially released a statement trying to say that she was okay and nothing, nothing was wrong, and that she hoped that she could be
essentially saying she hadn't been harmed by her government.
Yeah,
and
she's
that she
like,
wanted to play tennis more.
I hope to be able to play tennis for Chinese again soon. I hope I get the opportunity to do it, which is kind of a weird way to say that, as somebody who's in like the top 5, top 3 of women's tennis.
Not weird when you're either you believe in the Chinese doctrine or you're protecting yourself from the wrath of the Chinese.
Yeah, and the best part was the Women's Tennis Association, after that statement came out, they basically read this statement and they said, and this is, the show is called BS, they basically said BS. They basically said, nah, we don't believe this at all. We don't believe she said this at all. And there's been subsequent posts released videos are released of her going to restaurants and hanging out with friends and stuff, and all kind of, it's just weird. It feels forced when you see them or read it, and it's definitely suspicious. But again, this is the type of thing you get in a totalitarian regime like China. We talked about racial violence earlier. There's huge documentation of their, basically genocide of the Uyghurs, and the labor camps for the Uyghurs. But yeah,
defertilization of them.
Yeah, and there's they say, there's a lot of tennis players that are saying, they're not going to play.
National tennis players.
Yeah, a huge tennis player. I mean, Novak Djokovic basically said that. Well, actually, I'll get to him later because there's a lot of things going on with that guy. Gosh, I lost my train of thought now.
I'm sorry.
But
talking about
Naomi Osaka essentially said she doesn't believe the story either. She spoke out against the Chinese government, which I'm not a huge fan of Naomi Osaka. I hate the constant anxiety and racial political plays she makes whenever she talks to the media. But she actually spoke out against China for this. You have Ernest Cantor, the basketball player. A lot of people know his stance. I mean, that dude literally became a U.S. citizen this past week, and he changed his name to Ernest Cantor Freedom.
So he could have freedom on his jersey.
So he could have freedom on his jersey.
That's badass.
That is. I don't know much more that's American than that. So, welcome to U.S. citizenship, Ernest Cantor. But
welcome to have you. Thanks for coming.
Yeah, and the linking tennis also to the Australian thing too, and this Chinese thing. Novak Djokovic, he came out and basically said he doesn't believe the statement about Peng Shuai, or from Peng Shuai. He doesn't, trust the Chinese government, et cetera, spoke out about them. But there's also, he also said he doesn't plan on playing in the Australian Open, plans on skipping the tournament there. I think a lot of tennis stars actually going to. I think.
Why would you want to go there, man?
Yeah, I think Serena Williams might even be skipping the. He basically said that I think it's because his father wants to come to always comes to his matches too, and his father is unvaccinated and refuses to get vaxxed. But yeah, it's a really interesting way that China deals with its dissidents, and it's becoming here in the United States they still, for right now at least, they drown out what our dissidents have to say.
I mean, they don't. I guess we can compare it. In China, you can be ghosted. You can be depersoned. You can be at your house one day, and the next day your whole family, it's like the Gestapo came and took you away. That can happen in China. But the reflection of that in America is you can be deplatformed, you can lose your job, but you're not, at least unless you're Kyle Rittenhouse or maybe one of those 1% of extreme cases, you're not having the state really come after you in those extreme ways.
Yep, you'll essentially just like I said, you'll be quieted essentially. You'll lose your voice, but you'll still be able to live. Which I guess is the vast basic right that you
low
get.
bar.
Yeah. Unless of course Australia, where you're under lockdowns and they say you can't even go out for food now. But
there's a crazy, this is a tangent, but a crazy video from one of those COVID camps where a woman said if you cross this line, she was just walking on her patio and there's just an arbitrary yellow line painted on the patio and 3 people in full masks, full gear, full everything, and she's just sitting there chilling. It was like, if you walk by that line again, we're fining you $5,000. And it's like, okay. And so it kind of crazy transition here. People in America and around the world are catching on to these rules are extremely. They're not willing to follow them. I think that's why employment is so low in the U.S. Partly is because of all these ridiculous mandates, either poke related or face covering related.
I mean, I've probably said it before. The Game of Thrones quote: "If a king has to say he is king, is he really king?" Like if you have a populace that's not willing to follow your laws, and you have enforcers of laws that are not willing to enforce your laws, and you have a military that for the most part doesn't seem like they're particularly interested in listening to you either, are you really creating laws that are enforceable, or are you really governing a nation?
You brought up the point to me that one of the solutions to America's division might be subjugating the country into smaller nations. And I think you described to me maybe 4 at the time was your general thought. But if we just use the same structure we have now, why can't it be 50? And we already have the states. And instead of dividing us in a new way, we just suck the air out of the federal government and pump that air into the state governments.
So I'm a big believer, just like Brody is a big believer in decentralization. I'm a big believer in essentially defederalization. So like there's the idea of the federal government when it was established in Hamiltonian philosophy is that we needed that provided the structure for the Constitution, is that the Federalist Papers and all that, is that we needed a strong federal government to hold the states together. Otherwise, the states would continuously violate. It would be confusing. Everybody would get mad. And
the fear would be like a war between 2 states. So you have a militia here and a militia here, and the federal government was hopefully the umbrella that would neutralize any problems, and we have the courts so we can resolve problems without having physical or economic battles between states. You'd be able to have the federal government overreach that, and then protect against foreign nations and from discriminating against states.
Yeah, and you'd have different systems of currencies, different levels of infrastructure. And it would be so incredibly hard to do businesses with other states. You'd run the risk of, foreign governments like Britain invading one specific state, taking it over, and then going from state to state to state to state individually.
Like they make an ally. North Carolina is an ally with Britain, and that's where the invasion comes from.
Yeah, and et cetera, et cetera. But so much has changed since then. Yeah. We have this thing called the internet now. We do this thing which you can link communication so much easier than horseback mail, which is what they were doing back then.
Seconds instead of weeks.
Yeah, and you have this we have crypto wallets now. Digital wallets that you can exchange and convert currency at the tap of a button on your phone.
Cardano woke up this past week, and I've been using it so much. It's been so fun.
Yeah,
it's so fun.
So you have all that, and so the idea of switching currencies between 50 states is not a terribly daunting task.
We now have the infrastructure through blockchain technology where the problems that arose from, maybe we'll call it 1800s economics, where you have paper currency that differs between state, and now you might have a digital currency. Wow, that's crazy to think about. So I could be in Missouri, but I could use the Floridian currency hypothetically, because I think that, and so that would be a way for you to vote. So you could live in California but vote for Florida by using their currency instead of the California one. Potentially. I mean, regulations would certainly come into it, and there'd be a lot of battles, but that's just a crazy idea.
So Brody, I'm sure you're familiar with the Tower of Babel.
Yes, talked about it this week with a coworker.
Yeah, so Tower of Babel, you shoot the arrow into the sky, and releases all the different languages, and now all these people would speak different languages, and it created people to form groups based upon their languages because they can only understand each other. But as society is going on, whether or not that's true or not,
But the ethos of that story is decentralization.
Yeah. So essentially, but now as time has gone on, we have language apps. so many different things that you can almost understand somebody when they're speaking another language. The barrier between languages has been so muddied and thinned out.
I don't know if the root of that story is focusing on the language being the division that spread people out. I think the story talks about humanity's trying to accumulate in such a way that the powers that be can only build something so tall before it has to fail, before there's something that will intrinsically go wrong. So instead of too big to fail, it's so big that it has to fail.
It was kind of just a parable I was using. So the parable that I was using was that, you know, as we've grown as society and, you know, our technology has gotten better, we've been able to bridge the gap between languages. As society has grown and our technology has gotten better, we are now bridging the gap between currencies. And that being said, we may be bridging the gap between currencies and between governments and between borders, so that way we can have smaller states, smaller groups. And, you know, anybody who looks into, you know, philosophies of tribalism, they know that groups just work better when they're smaller. I mean, Khaldun's theories on, you know, marauding bands versus sedentary societies say that they only function best when, you know, sedentary societies only function best in the first few generations because they still have that group needed mentality, that we need each other in the group.
It's we, it's not you and me.
Yeah, so that we're dependent on each other. And I think that, like I was saying, the technology is there now that we could have smaller states or even individual states being states.
It could completely change the dynamics of the global power structure. The state might forever change.
Yeah, and, you know, conventional warfare, if you're worried about conventional warfare between states, you also have to think that conventional warfare is slightly becoming obsolete. You know, mutually assured destruction is more and more prevalent.
The ways people will fight are changing, but people will continue to fight.
Yeah, I mean, the latest breaking in military technology is hypersonic missile, and, you know, the only person that has that is right now allegedly is China. So, you know, if there's anybody to be scared of the country that disappears its tennis players and also, you know, puts their religious minorities in camps. So,
and lies about global pandemics.
Yeah, very, very shady. But
maybe the worst country in the history of the world.
I think North Korea has a little something to say about that. I in terms of places to live, I'd rather live on the economic coast of China than in North Korea.
They're definitely more prosperous in China than North Korea.
But, you know, China also props up the North Korean government. So
North Korea couldn't exist without China.
Yeah. So, but, you know, we've been doing the show a while, and we said before we were going to have kind of different little fun segments. And, you know, we said earlier that, you know, we did a segment called BS or Hell Yes. We said we do it every month. And that essentially is where we make predictions in the political climate and in the economic climate. And when those predictions come true, or in a month or so, we will report on them, and we will have a new segment called the BS Report Card. Well, and we said we were going to do that at the start of the next month. We missed the show where we were supposed to do that, but we're doing it now. Or the end of last month, I meant. But we missed that last show, so we're doing it now. So this is our BS Report Card, where we go over what we predicted at the start of last month. And the first one we said is that we covered the Youngkin election. We said BS or hell yes that Youngkin would win the election. I was right. Youngkin did win the election. I was quite happy with the result there. Not only that, he won it by a margin that was larger than predicted.
Yeah, quite big.
Quite big.
Bigger than could be manipulated or changed on the last day.
Yeah, and I said it like, I said, Brody, you believed in the manipulation. You thought the manipulation was going to have a factor in there.
I thought the race would be closer and that it would be more like we saw in the 2020 election with how the results were told to us.
Yeah, and that's...
I was wrong. I missed that.
That is important, though, that these races, to really not avoid where manipulation can have an effect, is they have to be fairly large. I mean, not only did we get that result that night, but we got a ton of results. It did not go well for the Democrats that night. They were getting trounced in New Jersey as well as Virginia. I think they just came out where there's no hope for the Democrats after recounts and all that to gain any kind of majority in the Virginia state House, I think it is. So the Republicans fully control the Virginia state House, which they haven't for a very long time.
Republicans control the majority of state legislatures.
Yeah, they really do. And in New Jersey, I mean, the big story that came out in New Jersey, of course, is the truck driver that...
Ed Truck.
He I think his name is Dorr. He spent like $153 on his campaign. I think he also had a bunch of money that was, PAC finance or something like that was thrown at him. But he only spent $153 of his personal wealth, I think, on his campaign. And he ended up defeating the Democratic majority leader, I think, or Senate leader or whatever in the state.
Don't think you can't have an impact.
Yeah, so no matter how small you are, if the populace is saying we'd rather have a root vegetable than our leader, they will elect you. So
they might.
Yeah, they might do it.
But you got to give them the chance to, because if you don't give them the chance to, you're going to get the same person you had before.
Yeah, but yeah, that was a good result. The second subject we talked about was would the infrastructure bill or the social spending bill, the Build Back Better plan,
two different ones,
so cringy, would get passed. And I said that those things were DOA, and I've doubled down on that since then, because after the Youngkin election, I said nobody's going to want to touch these bills. They're going to be toxic. No Democrat wants to attach themselves to this agenda. I was partially wrong about that. So the infrastructure bill has passed. Like I said,
the smaller of the two. Yeah,
the smaller of the two. Like I said, there's good stuff in the infrastructure bill. There's also a ton of bad stuff. The crypto hit, Brody. You can talk about that.
We'll see how it plays out. It won't come out until 2023, but essentially the way it's written is too vague, so that certain blockchains have protocols that work outside of the scope of the way the law is written, and they might have things prosecuted against them, even though the language of the law isn't really specific enough to do that. So it's vague enough to prosecute people based on whatever whim you might want.
But it's not stringent enough that they can ensure convictions, essentially.
Yeah, we'll see how it plays out. And depending on the blockchain, if it's decentralized enough, you don't have somebody to take to court.
That's very true. I mean, what a surprise, the government wrote a law that's vague and doesn't actually solve a problem. But
what gives them more money?
Yeah.
What a surprise.
Fills their coffers. But the Build Back Better plan has not been passed yet. It's still being argued over, still got plans to be passed, go through the voting. They've been pushing it off more and more, and they don't. It's because they don't have the votes. I mean, Joe Manchin, like, this guy, he has no political will to run for president, I know. But if the Democrats were smart, he'd be the only Democrat that could potentially win a presidential election, I feel.
So, but he's not a populist.
Oh, he's not a populist. I'm talking from a pure political strategic standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
Like he's the only one that could appeal to both sides of the aisle. He's the only Democrat that I would vote for.
Yeah, only Democrat that you might get some Republicans to be consider as a legitimate candidate.
He's the only one that would put up nominees for bureaucratic positions that Republicans immediately would go no, because all the nominees aren't radicals.
Yeah, he's not nominating communists.
Yeah, that still gets me. But
literal, but whatever. Last week, that was our last show.
Yeah, so the spending bill is still being argued. I still, again, I'm not sure about that, but they did just pass a emergency funding or whatever. they did just pass emergency funding for to ensure the government is funded, but even though
through the December 8th budgetary crisis or budget.
Yeah. So it's funded through February, which is kind of ridiculous because I feel like most people don't know that through mandatory spending, government, 82% of government, 83% of government is funded no matter what. So it's not oh my God, everything's crashing, which is why when we've gone through a government shutdown before, the DMV was still up and running.
It's usually minimal.
Yeah.
But some people it's really bad. But it's not society. It's not a huge blow in the short term.
They shut down the government equivalent of the janitorial staff essentially. So their
offices stink.
Yeah, that's still being passed. So it partially wrong, partially right there. But the last one was that we talked about was the fines that they were imposing on shipping liners on the coast. I haven't really heard much about this. I don't even know if those are still in place. I'm gonna say that we were right about that because you and I are in agreement about that, Brody. That they wouldn't help, and
they would do nothing more than fill the coffers of the California government.
They're still sitting out there. The shipping crisis is still going on.
But they're farther away, though, so now you can't see them from the beach.
The shipping crisis is still going on, so I'm going to say that it didn't help, and we were right about that.
And then this might be able to... Was there any more?
That was it for the first session.
This could be our closing topic, then. Relating to the shipping crisis and relating it to the inflationary environment of the economy, what relationship do you think that shares with the changing views of the Fed as it relates to maybe increasing interest rates?
So the Fed has basically come out and admitted that, this inflation isn't actually transitory, and it's no shit. What a surprise!
The screen.
What a surprise! Now they're manipulating interest rates to hope to curb that inflation.
Or they've talked about it, and then that's different from the taper too.
Yeah, and this is kind of an aside opinion, but have you seen Brody the picture that the Democratic the DCCC posted or whatever?
Democratic Communist Party. I don't know.
No, they're the campaign committee, the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee. That's what they're called. But they posted a picture. They took a picture from a tweet that a guy posted as sarcasm and a joke that showed a graph essentially that what Biden's done, releasing the 50 million barrels of
gas,
oil, and getting other countries to do it, which that 50 million barrels of oil, that's
a day,
that's 2.5 days worth of oil for the U.S. alone, and the other countries, they might have bought us another day. So it does nothing. But the graph on the picture, it essentially said that when you broke down all the numbers, we were saved 2 cents a gallon
for a week.
for a week, and the tweet said,
But still praised.
thanks Biden.
You're so wonderful.
And then the DCCC posted that and showed the picture like it was actual, like, a good thing. Like yeah, we're affecting change. Like,
that's why. What's
it's like, again, what's a banana cost? Like $7. Like, they don't get it.
I'm forgetting the word, but when you joke about something pretending it's legit, but you're really poking fun at it, like Ryan Long does these. Not
sarcasm, but oh gosh.
I can't think of it.
Yeah, I blanked on it, but it's really funny how they think they're like doing the minimal. They're doing things to try to affect change that aren't helping at all. Like when satire. That's it.
The Democrats can't meme because they are not able to identify satire, and memes are based on satire.
That's really, really true.
But that's why they aren't able to comprehend, and that's why memes were so powerful in the 2016 election, is because they have to point the finger and say no. But memes, we can just be like
all serious all the time. But yeah, it's really funny because you have Biden also being like, well, we're going to invest these gas companies for price gouging. It's like, they're not price gouging.
You're the one inflating
you're
the
price
crisis.
gouging us.
You're the one that's causing the shipping crisis, or at least making it worse. It's a global problem, but you're certainly making it worse. And then you're going to put people in jail because they're not able to provide their business service because of the global economic situation. Who knows? It's not like gas companies are good people, but
yeah. But I mean, it's just so weird, man. Like the Fed tapering, I think they'll taper inflation, or they'll manipulate interest rates in a way, and I think they've started to do that.
So there are two tools. Tapering is the amount of money they buy a month, and then interest rates are related to loans or bank accounts and stuff. And so they've said that they're going to taper. But when you look, they're not changing their allowance on their maximum amount of purchases. They're just lowering the minimum. So they're saying we don't have to spend as much. But when you look at their actual spending habits, they're not changing. So they're just saying we now have the potential to spend less each month. And that's a taper. And we're like, but they're not doing it.
It would be really funny just to watch the government have to sit down and plan out a budget and like actually stick to the budget.
Just a fucking grocery shopping list,
dude. Like it'd be so interesting and funny to watch. But I don't foresee. I think inflation is gonna go up once again. I think you're gonna see next month or this month going. I think you're gonna see more. I mean, the jobs numbers came out. They're dismal. About like they're 2/5 essentially of what they were hoping for. Yet again.
And they're even seasonally manipulated.
Yeah, they've literally had one, I think, of the last 6 months actually hit their target or exceed their goal in terms of jobs in the United States,
and it was
being filled
minimal margin.
Yeah, so like it's not. I think those jobs, I'd expect union protests to keep going on as well. I mean, you got the Kellogg strike that's been going on for months now, but I don't expect them to really do much more about inflation, and I think inflation will keep going up, and I think inflation will definitely go up if the spending bill gets passed. Mm-hmm. Because if Build Back Better gets passed, there's things in that bill that just totally increases inflation, and there's no way to argue that it doesn't, because they literally have regulations in there in certain businesses.
But the argument won't be that inflation is non-existent. It'll be that inflation is good for you, and that'll be a conversation for another day.
Oh my gosh, the amount of articles that I've seen that say, no, inflation is good. It helps you with your mortgage prices, and it's like, no, like, what are you talking about? Like, I can't afford my mortgage because I'm paying mortgage prices for my groceries. Like, what are you talking about?
But this is the one area where you actually might be able to absorb more wealth while you're losing it much faster in all the other areas.
Yeah, it's like, if I have a cut on my hand or something, right, and then I'm shot like it, and then I'm like shot like twice or 3 times.
I'll bandage your hand for you.
And then like somehow the doctor comes over and bandages my hand, but doesn't treat my bullet wounds, and they're like, that's the equivalent of saying, the doctor saying, yeah, your hand's gonna get a lot better now. Yeah, but I'm bleeding out. Like, this seems like a way more pertinent problem. But anyway. Yeah, so that was kind of, talking about the Fed and all that, and the inflation prices. And that's gonna come back around in our next segment here, which we did the report card, which is where we were right or we were wrong. That's always, of course, important to us. But now we're gonna get to the fun part, which is making predictions. So we're cramming that into one show today. So it's another edition of BS or Hell Yes, and we're going to start with a subject that I love and is definitely near and dear to Brody's heart, crypto. Plainly, Brody has, we've seen a huge turn down in crypto in the past couple of days. It is
24 hours.
Yeah, past 24 hours. It is now December the 4th. So
I'm gonna pull up a price real fast just so I can be specific for you.
Yeah, so while he's doing that, I'll just tell you, like, it's not just crypto. The markets have definitely taken a hit because everybody's not afraid of Omicron. They're afraid of the government's reaction to Omicron is what it is.
That's part of it. As it relates to crypto, we've had this double peak kind of cycle, and we've seen that in previous years. And so if we're to follow the pattern of 2013, which was the double peak, it would suggest that we're actually ending the bull run a little early and that we're not going to hit those new prices. But there's so much more economic turmoil that's occurring in global economics today, and the further development of crypto, it just doesn't appear to be the same to me. So this isn't investing advice, but I think we might see an extended bull cycle, which means December might be bad, and that means by the end of the year we might be closing 50,000 Bitcoin to 42,000 Bitcoin. Like, that actually could be the range. But if we get an extended cycle, this means February come March is when that next boom will occur. So it appears that if you are looking for end of year gains in crypto, it might not happen. But I'm going to go out on a limb and say new all-time highs for Bitcoin by March.
All right. So the question was going to be, has crypto peaked? And I think you're saying BS on that. So am I right?
So there's two time frames. Long term, I think anybody that's pro crypto will say it has not peaked and it will grow. But as it relates to this bull cycle, I will go out on a limb and say it is not over.
All right. So I'm going to say that I don't think it is peak either. So I think that, I basically agree with you that I think we're going to see a downturn. I think a lot of people are going to sell. I'm not selling. I'm in for the long haul. But I don't think crypto has peaked. I think crypto is the future, of course. And I think, we're seeing a minor dip right now. And I don't think
just a minor 20% dip.
Yeah, just a minor 20%.
That's crypto for you.
Hey, it's a volatile market. Like, it's you know the risk getting into that. What really shocked me were the stock dips. I mean, I have money in solid stocks that that dropped. That I saw drops of more than solid stocks that don't have much viability. It dropped $2 to $4, and that's incredible for a one-day loss or gain.
You percent or dollars?
Dollars. So
what were the percentages? Because if it's like a $200 stock and it goes down $4, whatever.
I mean,
stock?
it was 22 and it closed at like a little over 18. So like, yeah,
15%.
Yeah, that's
huge.
That's pretty big.
For the stock, man, 5% is huge. So 15 is crazy.
Yeah, that Omicron basically and fears of government reaction to Omicron can cause that. It's definitely weary. But the second subject we have here is it has to do with that a little bit, which is BS or hell yes. Will we see more lockdowns, Brody?
Where?
In the United States. Let's limit it to there.
Okay. I will say by the end of January, we will have the minimum is 3 states implementing some sort of lockdown.
3 states. All right.
And that's going out there because we know California and New York are the big ones. I'm going out and saying 3 states, all blue, will have some sort of lockdown. Whether it's for a specific population or everybody, I'm not putting all my marbles on the table, but that's what I'll go with.
I'm gonna say BS to that. I think that there might be a few states that implement lockdowns, but as I'm going to go from a more macro view, I don't think that a lot of states will do this. I don't think there's the political will, the political stomach to try to do that again. I think that Dems are interested in at least having a few seats in Congress, so they need to not be more lockdowns. They need to get the economy back up and running off of life support. Whether they actually will, I'm not sure, but they know lockdowns won't help that. So I'm gonna say BS on that. Now, the second goes back to something we already talked to today, which is Roe versus Wade and the abortion debate. So do you think that Roe, BS or hell yes, will Roe be overturned?
Okay.
That's the bedrock now too.
So at that layer 1, I'm gonna say no. Roe will not be. Well, I need to talk to you just for a second about it. It might, by the letter of the law, be overturned. I think that the states will get power returned to them to enforce when it is not acceptable for women to have abortions. And so I'm not sure how that relates specifically to Roe v. Wade or to Casey, but overall there will be a change in the interpretation of how abortion laws are enforced in America.
So you believe that it will go back to states basically controlling that, right?
Yes, so there'll be some states with some. So I think that it's a hell yes. It will change.
Yeah, so I'm gonna that's more of a hell yes opinion, because your Roe essentially establishes the standard that you have a standard of everybody has the right to an abortion and the states can't deny you that. But I'm gonna say BS on that because I think it would be a very strong extending of I think it would be a very strong statement for this Supreme Court to make, and I don't think they're ready for the political fallout of that. I think there's a lot of encouragement. Now, the court is not supposed to be political actors, and of course we know the court leans conservative right now, 6-3. But yeah, I would go with BS. I don't think they'll overturn Roe. I think that will be too extreme for them. But I do think they'll overturn Casey versus the Planned Parenthood. I think they will get rid of the viability standard, and that we're going to see states not say you can't get abortion, but set set different standards of different viabilities of when you can. Like I foresee California after that saying you can get an abortion up until you give birth, and I see Texas being like you have 3 weeks. So
because I mean you could technically say you have 24 hours, and that's essentially a ban on abortion. So it's weird how it might all play out, but we actually agree on what will happen as far as there will be empowerment to the states to enforce laws more how they see fit, but I don't think abortion bans will happen in the near future.
Yeah. So the next one we got here is will the spending bill pass? Will the Build Back Better plan pass, which we talked a little bit before. I am of the opinion that it will not. I don't foresee this they want to pass it by the end of this year. I don't foresee it getting passed by the end of this year. I think it will be pushed off even later, but they need to get it voted in before the midterms. I don't foresee that happening because I really think this bill is dead on arrival, so I'm going to say BS. BS. I don't think, like I said, the infrastructure bill was a little bit more easier to stomach because, I think it was all the New York Democrats or all the New Jersey Democrat or Republicans or whatever voted for the infrastructure bill because the bridges like updates or whatever in those states they are very, very popular with their constituents, so they voted for their constituency, which I don't really hold that against them.
I
but
do. I'm kidding.
Yeah, macro level here. But yeah, I don't foresee there's just both the far left hate the bill now and the right hates the bill, obviously, and I secretly think Biden doesn't want the bill to pass because he knows it will make the economy worse. So, and he does not want that.
I don't even know if he knows where the bathroom is.
That is also a true possibility. So we talked about the Fed and all that too. But do you think the Fed, BS or hell yes, do you think the Fed will do more to stop inflation?
They will do nothing the rest of this year. They will threaten to reduce the taper, and I do not see interest rates going up until maybe right before Q2 of 2022.
Yeah, I also say BS on that. Now, will they attempt to look like they're doing something?
Oh yeah,
maybe. But will they actually do anything that has an effect on their economy? On the economy? No. So we're gonna go with BS there. So the last topic we got here is Twitter. So if you didn't know, Jack Dorsey, who is the CEO of Twitter, is out. He has left Twitter to go spend more time shaping his beard and deciding where to go with Bitcoin, which he loves.
Yeah, building layer 2 Bitcoin solutions. I'm super bullish on that idea.
Yeah. So he's out to tend his fields like Thanos at the end of a Marvel movie. He's out, and now the new CEO was the chief technology officer for the company, Parag Agrawal. Now, there's a few things about Parag. I'll just ask the question first. Brody, do you think the new Twitter CEO, BS or hell yes, will damage Twitter's brand?
If that means that Twitter becomes more politically divisive, making it more unpopular and more of an echo chamber, I will say yes. But in the next month to 2 months, I do not see Twitter's, we'll just say, use case going down at all. I don't think less people will be on Twitter in 2 months.
Oh yeah, in the short term, it won't have a huge effect. Their stock prices might go up as they did. But of course, before everything tanked. But I think in the long term, it will damage Twitter's brand, because I mean, this is a guy, you've seen his statements on the First Amendment, right? So his statements on the First Amendment was that, Twitter is not, we are not beholden to the First Amendment. It's not our job to be beholden to the First Amendment. He has a more corporatist view of Twitter than Dorsey, who was one of the founders of Twitter, which was supposed to be a free, basically speech podium for everybody. But he has more, this is a business, we're going to run it as a business. He's not big on free speech. It's that they've already started implementing new ways to kind of track and ban misinformation and etc. But I think it's really interesting that they chose the chief technology officer to be the new CEO, and Twitter doesn't have a technology problem. This guy's a technological engineer. They don't have an engineering problem. They have a PR problem and a speech problem, a philosophy problem.
What are you engineering? He's not engineering the interface that you get on Twitter with. He's engineering the ideas of the people who utilize the platform.
Yeah, and
that's going to continue to happen at the detriment, because he'll spin it in a negative way.
That's true, I think. So yeah, that was kind of our new session of BS or Hell Yes. We will have a new report card coming out at the end of the month. Hopefully we'll get results for all of these. I'm not sure we'll get results for all of them, but we will definitely speak on them again. We've covered a whole lot today.
We had to catch up a week.
Yeah, we had to catch up. Show probably ran pretty long today. I think that's all we really got to say for right now. Brody, do you have anything you want to say before we sign off?
Thanks for watching.
Yeah, I love you guys watching as well. Make sure you like, subscribe, share, all that. Make sure you check out Brody's crypto channel. If you can just search him in the YouTube, Brody Stringer. He is a way more knowledgeable about the intricacies of crypto than me. I also have a new channel coming out for you guys. It's up right now. There's no content on it, but I will hopefully put out my first video this coming week. It is called Kitchen Sink Economics. Basically, the idea is that we help provide you information and education and news, help you better understand economic subjects that might be talked around the kitchen sink, whether that's the kitchen at work or the kitchen at home, things like that. The first video is probably going to be about crypto, and it's going to be on basically the nature of what is crypto, what is Bitcoin, and that's pretty much it. Help you understand how all that works in the intricacies. It can get complicated, and hopefully I make it a little easier for you guys to understand. If you're interested in anything like Meld, Sunday Swap, things like that
Cardano.
Cardano, things like that I'm not as much knowledgeable on, go check Brody channel out, because he's the master at that. And we appreciate you guys watching. You guys have a terrific day.
Later, guys.